Tonight we finish our sermon series called Resolution, a resolution, as we finish up the month of January and we get ready to turn our faces towards Valentine's Day in February and all that will offer us. We'll look at that next week. But tonight we finish up with Nehemiah and this great story of redemption and rebuilding that which had been broken, and God makes it new. Let's share in God's good word together. So I came to Jerusalem and was there for 3 days. Then I got up during the night, I and a few men with me. I told no one what my God had put into my heart to do for Jerusalem. The only animal I took was the animal I rode. I went out by night by the valley gate, past the dragon spring, and to the dung gate. And I inspected the walls of Jerusalem that had been broken down and its gates that had been destroyed by fire. So I went up by way of the valley by night and inspected the wall. Then I turned back and entered by the valley gate and so returned. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Amen. You may be seated. Renew, refocus, recommit, reintegrate, restore, rebuild. That all sounds great. It also sounds kind of exhausting, doesn't it? It's like many of you have been praying for a snow day. Like, where'd the Christmas break go? I just need a day. Just need a day. And we come to these times, we come to this season in January where it is a season of self-improvement, right? What season is, say it with me, of self-improvement. And therein itself lies the problem, that when we turn our ideas on ourselves, when the world says to look at yourself and to look inwardly, what we find is a culture of narcissists. That's all you get. With self-improvement, you just self, and you try to pull up yourself by your bootstraps, and sometimes you do. Sometimes you do it for a little bit, sometimes you do it for a little longer, and if you do it for a long time, then you get to wrestle with the sin of pride. It just kind of goes from one to the other. And so the thing is, if you really want to be improved, we are called to be a new creation in Christ. But that's not about focusing on ourselves. It's about focusing on something that's bigger than we are. And so in this resolution or resolution series that we're in, we're imploring you and begging all of us to get our eyes off of just ourselves and to open up ourselves to the will of God, whatever that might be. It is the season of self-improvement. And so the thing is, the question that we often ask in this season is, what should I do about me? Right? What should I do about me? But that is really fairly limiting. There's a better question out there, and it's really this, and that is, what needs to be done around me? Right? If you have your sermon notes, you can follow along, and these are your blanks as we move along. What needs to be done around me? As we began this series, our pastor Andy here asked this question this way. He says, well, what breaks your heart? What breaks your heart? And if we're not careful, the older we get, the answer is not much. Not much. Now, when you're young, I remember when I was 5 years old, my mom thought it was a good idea to drive me to Tulsa to watch Where the Red Fern Grows. I cried my eyes out for like a week. I mean, that's a horrible movie. I mean, if you love dogs, I mean, it's just, I don't know. If you haven't seen it, I don't know whether to recommend it to you or not. It's beautiful, but I mean, it'll break your heart. Now, I remember, being tender-hearted and soft-hearted, and certainly in the jobs that we have as adults that require caregiving or counseling or doing funerals or marital issues or issues with children, if we're not careful, we start to insulate our hearts and our lives from all the pain around us because we just don't know if we can take it. We don't know if we can take another thing that breaks our heart. And if we're not careful, we will go from crying at where the red fern grows to not crying at all about anything. Ever. Because we keep the world at a distance because it seems safer that way. But the Lord comes and asks us, what breaks your heart? As Jesus in Matthew 9 looks across the crowds, they were so helpless and hapless, Jesus says, his heart broke. They were like sheep without a shepherd. They had no idea where to go, and Jesus' heart broke for them. My question for you tonight is, what breaks your heart? I mean, when's the last time you teared up about anything other than the stock market? Right? Something that happens beyond yourself. Beyond our own homes. What breaks your heart? And over the last 3 weeks now, we've been asking to pray about that. Lord, break my heart. What breaks your heart? I want my heart to break for what breaks your heart. And you may be here tonight and even if you've been with us all 3 weeks up to now, you may say, well, you know what? I still don't know what breaks my heart. I don't know what breaks my heart or what to do about it. And friends, if that's you, you're not alone. And you're in good company. Because here's the thing, around Edmond and around most cities, nobody slows down long enough to have their heart broken. You can't have your heart broken in a hurry, right? It's like, well, what are you feeling? I don't have time to feel. I'm on my way to soccer. I'm on my way to dance. I'm on my way to this. I'm on my way to that. I don't have time to have my heart broken. I don't have time. I can't slow down for that. We just zoom right on by our emotions. We keep ourselves busy so we don't have to feel anything. And I had a good friend of mine say to me one time, she said to me, you know, Mark, you can't heal what you don't feel. And you can't feel what you medicate. You can't heal what you don't feel, and you can't feel what you medicate. And she was exactly right. So tonight I want to invite you just to slow down for a moment and see what the Lord might say to you. That you might be healed and whole and in His presence again, in His fullness. So we go all the way back to Nehemiah. It's a book in the Bible. We believe that Nehemiah was coming into the scene about 445 BC, nearly 500 years before Jesus. So more than 2,000 years, maybe 2,500 years ago. And this prophet, this figure, this Nehemiah comes in, and the first thing that he does is he takes enough time to slow down and to pray. In Nehemiah 1:3-6, it says this: the survivors there in the province who escaped captivity are in great trouble. Nehemiah learns of this shame. And the wall of Jerusalem is broken down, and its gates have been destroyed by fire. And when I heard these words, this is Nehemiah's own memoirs here, I sat down and I wept. I sat down and I wept and I mourned for days, and I fasted and I prayed before the God of heaven because his heart was broken. You might remember that previously with David and Solomon, there was one kingdom around 922, some 400 plus years, 500 years before this. And then the northern kingdom of Israel falls in 722 to the Assyrians. And then the southern kingdom of Judah falls to Babylon, modern-day Iraq, in about 586. And so all of this has passed. So many people are broken. So many people have been taken as slaves. So many people are all over the Middle East. And this comes to Nehemiah. And he's heartbroken that the very walls that used to be protection and love and grace and community and health are broken. So first he prays. And then he gets real with God. This isn't a fake prayer. This isn't a sham. This isn't just for show. He says, I said, O Lord God of heaven, the great and awesome God who keeps covenant and steadfast love with those who love him and keep his commandments. Let your ear be attentive and your eyes open to hear the prayer of your servant that I now pray before you day and night for your servants, the people of Israel, those who are hurting, confessing the sins of the people of Israel, which we have sinned against you. Notice that he's putting himself in there. He's not pointing at other people. He's like, yes, even me and my family, both I and my family have sinned. Yes, you know, I'm broken, they're broken, the walls are broken, we're broken. God, we need your help. And friends, here's the thing. Until you get to that point where you realize that there are things broken in the world and you're a part of that brokenness, healing is far from you. How many of you all go to the doctor just for fun, even if you're not sick? Not many people do that. Right? It's bad stewardship. Doctors cost a lot of money. So, you know, only go when you're sick. When you realize that you're broken, that's when you go. And that's what he does. He prays. He gets real with God. Secondly, then, he goes and asks for what he wants. He goes to the king. He's serving under Artaxerxes as the cupbearer. Now, cupbearer is great if you love food, but it's bad for your health because people are trying to, poison the king. And so the cupbearers were the ones that, drank the stuff first. And if you lived, it was good wine. If you're dead, well, that was the end of you. That's just what cupbearers did. That was his job. And so he goes to this king. Imagine, he goes to him and he says, if it pleases the king, and if your servant has found favor with you, I ask that you send me to Judah, back to Jerusalem. But Judah is that southern kingdom. Jerusalem sits 9 miles south of what would have been the border between the northern kingdom of Israel and Judah. So he's asking you to go back to the city of his ancestors' graves so that he may rebuild it. This is a call that he has on his life. He's heartbroken over the broken down walls, and he wants to go back. He asks, and he gets the okay to go back to Judah. And so third, then, when he actually goes back, he does what I would encourage you to do. If your heart begins to break for something, assess the need. That says to need take a good, serious, sober look at what's going on around you. Do your research. And this is really good management, friends. This is a good way, an example of how to live your life. When your heart breaks, pray to God. Let God know what the real deal is with you. Own that, and then start to move into it. Ask for what you need, and then take a step. And then as you take that step, look around you and see what is the real need. So the scripture says this, so I went up by way of the valley by night, and he inspected the wall. He didn't just start building willy-nilly or building a whole new wall or doing this or doing that or doing something on his own. He looked at what had been there. He looked at where the gaps were, and he started to fill them. Then I turned back and entered the valley gate, and so returned, and the officials didn't know that I had gone or what I was doing. I had not yet told the Jews or the priests or the nobles or the officials and the rest that were to do the work. You see, that's a problem a lot of times when we get excited about something and it's bigger than we are and we know we're going to need a lot of help. Sometimes before we even have a plan, we're like, oh, hey, we're going to go do this. And everybody goes, no, you're not. You don't know. You see, he's smarter than that. He waits and he plans and he assesses and he says, this is what I see. But he doesn't just tell everybody about it yet. He's still praying, he's still planning, he's still thinking, and he knows he's going to need some help with this. And then fourth comes to the point where so many of us fail in our faith lives, is finally he comes to that moment of decision. He comes to that moment where we all have to come to, and it is you have to decide. Tonight we have people who are giving their life to Christ for the first time, that they are deciding to follow Jesus. There's nothing more important you can do with all of your life. That's where Nehemiah got to. He was like, we have to decide that we're going to do this. At great cost, at great peril. It was some pain and a lot of cost. So Nehemiah says this, I said to them, you see the trouble we are in. He's assessing the situation. He's letting them know this is a real problem. Jerusalem lies in ruins, and its gates have been burned with fire. The gates are those places where you let people in and out, and that keeps you safe. Come, let us rebuild the wall of Jerusalem, and we will no longer be in disgrace. It's very clear. He's assessed it, he's prayed about it, he's asked for what he needs, and he's decided to go. And now the decision has been made. Now, for you and I, we have lots of walls. We have, little walls. We have little gardening walls or, raised beds for our gardens. Why is this a big deal? Well, friends, you cannot overemphasize how important the fortification of a city would have been in that time. Rebuilding the wall provided a safe community. Without the wall, there was no safety. There was no place to keep you from being overrun by any group that wanted to come in and take you away to be a slave or murder your family or anything horrible that you can think of. It provided a safe community. It provided a better community. It allowed you to have safety for your kids to play and for you to have good, solid work and for you to have a life and to have a community together, a place to live. And it was a protection of life itself, friends. It wasn't just a good neighborhood association. Okay, you understand that in this time, more than 2,000 years ago, nearly 3,000 years ago, they didn't have a navy. They didn't have an air force. They didn't have armies that were out. They didn't have good intel, right? What they had was a wall, and that was all they had. They had a wall, and they had some spears and some knives, and that was it. And so if the wall was up, they were good. If the wall was down, they were in danger. They were vulnerable, and they worried about it. You see, this wall is what provided life as they knew it. It represented a safety, a hedge of protection around them and their families and all those that they loved. It protected their very way of life. So in the ancient cities who lived in these sorts of ways thousands of years ago, they would look for the highest point. So this is sort of a topographical map, if you will, and this is Jerusalem. And over here is a valley. This would be the Mount of Olives, where Jesus comes into town. Here's the Kidron Valley. This is the little city of David, by the way. It's tiny, just a few acres. And then over here is going to be the Temple Mount up here and the upper city. But you can see there it's mountainous. It goes up and down. So there's a valley here, a valley down here, a valley around there. And so what you would do is you would go to the high ground. That's why they call it the high ground, because it's the high ground. You go up there and you do that so you can see the bad people coming. And then what you do is once you get on the high ground, what do? You build a wall. So that's even higher ground. And that keeps you protected. So you live in here, you come down here, the Gihon Spring is right down here, and so you go down there to get the water, and then you get back inside the wall as fast as you can. And that's how the people lived. So you can see there's a little tiny city of David down here, and then the wall that goes around. Now, if you were to see that modern day, it's going to look more like this. So there it is, and you can see the wall again here. Here's the little city of David down here. and then there's the big wall. And then here's the Temple Mount, the very highest point of the ridge. King Herod filled it in so that it was flat. It wouldn't have been flat before King Herod's reign, but it's flat now because he brought in all that earth with the slave labor that he used, and now it looks like that. Chantel and I went in April, so if you were to look up there, the Temple Mount is right here. You can see just the very tip of the dome of the rock right there. We're standing in the Mount of Olives looking up, so you can see this huge shift in elevation. Here's a car. I mean, you can see that. I mean, this is a major deal. And then this is the wall, right, up here that Nehemiah would have been rebuilding. Now, you can see it looks differently here to here. This top part would have been rebuilt by the Ottoman Empire, probably 1600s or so, but it would have been much like that, although the rocks would have been bigger in Nehemiah's day or Jesus' day. So if you came closer, it would look more like this. I mean, it's just this mammoth structure, and you can see these huge, huge stones that are just, bigger than a person by a long shot. And they had these huge sort of roller deals where they'd put the rocks in and they would roll them, and they would put. It's really an amazing feat of architecture that it stands today after thousands and thousands of years. For Nehemiah, the rock would have looked more like this, and again, the Ottomans would have used smaller stones up here. You can kind of see that it looks different, but you can still go there today, and basically you can see the same wall that Nehemiah was rebuilding. And so it is this wall that protected them. It was this wall that provided them life. It was this wall that allowed them to live. So what was the response of the people? Nehemiah comes and he says, look, this won't do. We're not safe. What are we going to do? And so the people say this in Nehemiah 2. He also told them about the gracious hand of my God, that God was with them, and what the king had said to me. And they replied, let us start rebuilding. And they began this good work. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, what's more fun, building or rebuilding? Building's way more fun, isn't it? Maybe y'all ever rebuilt? You ever go to the beach and you build a sand castle and you're like, oh, this is so great, and then a wave wipes it out and you're like, I got to rebuild it. Right? I mean, it's not that exciting to rebuild, but you need to do it, or you want to do it. Would you rather build a brand new house or repair your house? Right? I mean, this is a big thing. At times, though, there's a call to rebuild that which has been lost, to make it good again, to make it strong again. And they replied, let us start rebuilding. And so they began this good work. What kind of work was it? Good work, important work, helpful work to the people. They all had to do it together. And notice that it's all the people. It's not some of the people. It's not hired hands. It's not day laborers. It's not this group and not that group. It's everyone, every person. And so the priest made repairs each in front of his own house. Nehemiah goes above the horse gate, and the priest made repairs each in front of his own house. Now, priests in that day look a lot like priests this day. In the Orthodox Church, they're going to have big hats and big robes and jewelry, and kind of look like the Pope. And imagine that doesn't work very well for building walls. But Nehemiah goes to them and says, hey, you need to go and build in front of your house. And you'll notice that their occupation didn't influence their involvement. Now, this is odd to us because, around Edmond, certain people do certain things, and other people do other things, and very few people do everything. And Nehemiah comes in great contrast to this and says, no, look, this is going to take all of us. We're in danger. This needs to change. It needs to change now. This is urgent. Everybody, look out in front of your own house, and if there's a chink in the wall, if there's a problem here, you got to fix it. I don't care if you're a doctor or a lawyer or a nurse, an accountant, whatever it is, fix your wall because the bad guys are coming. And if it doesn't really matter if they get in over at block 38 or if they get in at block 22, once they're in, they're in. So everybody stop what you're doing and fix the wall that's in front of you. Regardless of what you do, regardless of your occupation, work on what is in front of you. So when they didn't know where to work, they worked on what was in front of them. Now this is important, friends. Because so oftentimes when you say, well, I don't know what my heart breaks about, and I don't really know what the Lord would have me do. I do. It's called your husband. It's called your child. It's called your parent. It's called your sister. It's called your neighbor. Jesus talked a lot about that. Love your neighbor as yourself. And of course, we are the person in the story that goes, well, Jesus, exactly who is that neighbor? what exactly is the definition of neighbor? Because I'm pretty sure I don't have any of those, right? I just have nice people that don't need any help around me, right? So I'm going to go and live my life the way I want to. Who is this neighbor exactly, Jesus? And notice that in Nehemiah, when the work needed to be done, he says, look, I don't care where you live. I don't care what your title is. I don't care how long you've lived here or how long you've been a member of this or that. Fix what's in front of you. Fix what's in front of you. And that's the way it is with God. Start with where we are. Their occupation did not influence their involvement. And when they didn't know where to work, they worked on what was in front of them. When I was in seminary, I had the great opportunity to be in a small group with a number of colleagues, and one of the great mentors in my life is a man by the name of Jim Turley. Jim was a law partner in a huge law firm down in Houston, and he quit his job to go to seminary in his 50s. Just an amazing story. And he decides to be in seminary. So he was 2 years in front of me, and so he was mentoring me along, and he said this to me. He says, Mark, do ministry where you are because you can't do ministry where you're not. And I thought that was the strangest thing to say until I started to think about it. And the longer I've been in ministry, I've known more and more colleagues that when we get together for these sort of annual conference events, if we're not careful, we'll be tempted to say things like, well, you know, if I served that church and I had that staff or I had that endowment, then I would do this. Right? Isn't it easy to live your life in somebody else's home, in somebody else's neighborhood? Well, nobody did this last week, right? If I win the Powerball, right, I would do this. I would tithe the Acts 2 and build the next 4 facilities, or whatever it is. If I win the Powerball, then I'm going to give $4.3 million to every person, in America and solve, poverty. If I win the Powerball, right? Do you not do that? We all have this temptation that we want to do ministry where we're not. We can pretend ministry in our mind, which keeps us from ever doing ministry right where we are. We just think about, well, if I had more time, if I had a different job, if I had more income, if I had less income, if I had, whatever it is. When the kids get grown, well, if I still had kids, then. But friends, you do ministry where you are because you can't do ministry where you are not. It just works that way. It just works that way. Now, the thing is, the Bible says in Nehemiah that we're to do the work that's in front of us. But sometimes the work that needs to be done comes to us sort of out of the blue. It comes sort of out of the back door, if you will. A few years ago now, I came home from visiting one of our congregants, and I said to Chantel, I said, I found a house that I want to buy. And she said, why? What's the house look like? I was like, I don't really know, but it's got a great backyard. She was like, well, I'm going to need to see the house. We need to see a couple of things. I said, well, it doesn't really matter to me because there's an empty lot to the north and there's empty lots to the west, and that's all I care about. So when the big ice storm came, I took this photo because this is how I think of my house, right? I look out and that's what I see. Over to the right, St. Monica's, and you actually can see our church from our backyard. We're roughly 3 miles away. This is why I live there, because I was raised in western Oklahoma. I love a good sunset, and so pretty much, if it's up to me, whenever sunset is, I'm going to be standing at my back fence just looking like an idiot, just looking out the sunset. That's what I do. I just love it. It reminds me of God's faithfulness as the sun comes and sun goes, that every day is a new start. We get a new day with God. It's one of the most centering, disciplined things I have in my life. I love watching the sun go down and know that we've got another day coming. And so on that particular night, Chantel goes, hey, the sun's out for like 4 minutes on this day. You better go out there to see. And these sorts of things just, light up in front of me. I mean, that's just grass in the backyard. I have some mowing to do, apparently. And, just some beautiful things that the Lord does, right? But there's something else that I did not think about when I thought about moving into a house that had 2 green belts that were hundreds of acres on either side, or at least it feels that way to me. I've never measured it. And that is, from time to time, wild turkeys come into our backyard, and deer jump over our fence and eat all of our bird seed. And then there are coyotes that want to eat our little puppy. And there are armadillos that rip up our flowers. And there are gophers that have big mouths. And there are voles, and there are moles. And one night, really late, I heard this wham, wham, wham. And I thought somebody was breaking in the back of our house. And so it's like 2 in the morning. And I go out, I'm in my jammy pants, and I flip on the light, and there are these 2 huge raccoons just staring at me. And they were getting in this bin that I had in the backyard that held our dog food, and they were Open it, and dropping it, open it, and dropping it. And they just looked at me. And I had to go outside. They wouldn't leave. There's like, I'm eating your dog food. I'm going to get in there, and then I'm going to hop out. And so I go and I lock it down with the carabiner. And when I go out there and they kind of run off, these huge raccoons, something happened to me that's never happened to me before. This rat that's like that big comes over, and he just looks at me like, what? And he didn't move. I'm like, boo, rat, like go into the field. And he's like, bring it. You're like, you can't do anything about me. I'm the worst rat of your life. And so I set up this, this mouse trap in the garage. Nothing. I got a bigger one in the garage. Nothing. I got a super huge one. I'm like, I go, because I'm going to smack it. Nothing. I would put cheese. I would put peanut butter. I put everything. Nothing. I mean, they would just trip it, eat the stuff, and leave. Like, I'm telling you, I'm the baddest rat there has ever been. Bring it. And then, even though I was trying, I didn't spend a lot of time battling the rat. It was just kind of, in and out of my mind. I'm thinking, we got rats. But, I'm busy. I got stuff to do. And then, one night we were about to go to bed, and I heard it. In the attic. In the walls. I'm like, that better be the dog. It was the rat. And I thought, how? And so I went to the rat experts. You know what the rat experts say? Rats can climb walls. They can climb brick walls, just climb. And you know what they did? They ate through my roof. In 7 places. I didn't even know they could do that. And so, I should have been more attentive to battle the rats earlier. But I did not. So now I've got like 18 traps in the attic. Like trying not to smash my fingers. And I finally get the rat people who do it professionally. And so you too, if you would like to pay $1,408, can have a rat person come and do this around all the little, you see that metal, that sheet metal? At every place in your soffit around, you got to put those in there so they won't eat through them. And you're guaranteed for a year. I have a feeling I'm going to write another $1,400 check next year when they eat someplace else. But, friends, feel my pain. Learn from me. If you suspect you're about to have a rat in your attic, do something about it. All of us have rats that are trying to get in our attics. You do. And you don't think much about it. You're feeding the dog, you're doing this, and they kind of look at you and go, that's odd. You move on with your life. You hear a little scratchy, like, I should probably do something about that. You go on with your life. And next thing you know, if you don't get those rats out, you're going to replace all of your insulation for like 10 grand. Now, I'm not really talking about rats anymore. But you know that. You're very smart people. But we all have these little things in our life that we just hope, well, it's probably not a big deal. I don't think the Lord really minds that in my life. I know He says that it's bad, but, nothing horrible's happened yet. The rats haven't come out and attacked me in my bed. But it happens, doesn't it? And so this is what Nehemiah does. He says, look, the rats are coming. They're coming. You've got holes in your wall. You have holes in your soffit. You have holes in your relationships. You have holes in your church. You have holes in your work. You have holes in the things that are important. What are you going to do? Pay attention to it. Do it quickly. There's some things in life that you can do at your own pace. There are certain things in life you can get to when you get to, but there are other things that have to be done now. Right now. Not another day, not another week. If you've got somebody leaving your party and they are drunk, you don't get to think about it for a few days and wonder if they get home. You have to take their keys so they don't die on the way home, don't you? There are certain things at certain times you have to do immediately. Not always, not very often, but sometimes you just got to get on it. Or you're going to have rats in your attic. So Nehemiah organizes the work. We're at point 4 here. Nehemiah organizes the work in chapter 3. He says, between the upper room and the corner of the sheep gate, friends, the goldsmiths, the merchants, go. Make repairs right now. You go over there. Priest, you go over here. You do this. You do that. Boom, 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 boom. Because there were holes in the wall and they were vulnerable. The rats were coming. And then, as if that weren't bad enough, this is important for you to know. As soon as you start to make a good difference in something that the Lord wants you to do, just wait. It's going to get worse. It absolutely will. Because I thought, hey, I'm just going to set some traps and the rats are going to go. No. It's not till Terminex tells me that I owe them $1,400, right? I wasn't happy about that. That's worse for me. Like, I like to live in denial, thinking, no, $2.50 trap's going to do it. But no, look what happens. When they start to rebuild the wall, when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that repairing the walls of Jerusalem was going forward, they knew that their ability to raid them was coming to a close. And so the gaps were beginning to be closed, and they were very angry, and they all plotted together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause confusion in it. So we prayed to our God and set a guard as a protection against them day and night. So now you're not just building the wall, you're guarding the wall and building the wall at the same time. And so look what happens in the story. It says, from that day on, half of my servants worked on the construction, and half held spears, shields, bows, and body armor, and the leaders posted themselves behind the whole house of Judah who were building the wall. The burden bearers carried their loads in such a way that each labored with the work with one hand. One hand is laboring, and the other one holds a weapon. Now, it's hard to build a wall like this while you hold your weapon in the other hand. But there are times in your life where you just have to do both. You have to multitask. You have to get it done. You have to get it done quick because the rats are coming. You understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you just have to get it done. And it's very hard. And it's very difficult. And it takes everybody working at the same time. And the people responded. From that day on, they did it. They worked on the construction. And on the other hand, they guarded it. Some things are urgent and they must be done now. And people got tired. And they're like, I can't do this forever. And Nehemiah was such a great leader. He was very smart. You know what he did? He had them over for dinner. He gathered them around. He said, look, I know you're tired. I know this is hard. I know this is scary. So come to dinner. And so through his generosity, in chapter 5, we find that, moreover, he says he gets 150 people to dinner. He brings them to his table. And he throws a huge banquet. And they slaughter an ox and sheep and, chickens and fowl and lots of wine. And they have all of this, and they say, you can do it, you can do it. And he encourages them with his own generosity. He doesn't take money from other people to do it. With his own self, he says, I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to help you through his own generosity. And that's such an important part of any movement, isn't it? That you have some people that come alongside and say, I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to help you with this. Now, this is the amazing part. You know what happens? In the story, in chapter 6, the wall was completed in 52 days. 52 days. That's really hard work when you're building with one hand and carrying a spear and knife in the other. And that's a big deal. And when all of our enemies heard of it, all the nations around us were afraid and fell greatly on their own esteem, for they perceived that this work had been accomplished by God. That God had done this. God had been in the middle of this. God sent Nehemiah from a whole other area all the way in to rebuild the wall and to save the people, and to make things good again. Now, this would be a nice place to end the story. Like, yay, Nehemiah, yay, people. You see what they did for themselves? That's where you would kind of expect the story to end, but that's not where it ends. The whole point of rebuilding the wall is not for them anyway. Why did they do it? In chapter 7, it says, then my God put into my mind to assemble all the nobles and the officials and the people to be enrolled by genealogy, all the people that had been taken away to Babylon, all the people who had been lost, all the people who had been enslaved. This was their homecoming, friends. They rebuilt the wall not just for them, but for all those who could come, so they could come home. See, they'd been carried into exile, into Babylon, but they returned to Jerusalem and to Judah, each to his own town, each to his own home. They did this so that people could come home to God, to the family of faith. That's what church is about. We build buildings and we are the church so that people might come to know the love and protection and grace of God. So that people could be welcomed home. That's what we're about. To welcome the stranger. To lift up those who are brokenhearted and the oppressed. Jesus says this about you. We say this at the close of every service. You are the light of the world. That's what Jesus says about you, about every follower. You are the light of the world. And if the church is the light of the world, it is a part of your world. The church is a part of your world. I mean, you're here tonight. The church is a part of your world, but you are the light of the world. And if the church is the light of the world, help us flip the switch. It takes all of us, regardless of occupation, regardless of, station in life. It takes all of us. Help us flip that switch. Help us flip the switch. Now, I don't know if you noticed this at children's time or not, but we got something going on here. On Friday nights, we have a bunch of young families come here. Did you count the number of kids we had up here tonight? I did. Anybody know how many kids we had up here tonight? 40. 40. Say it with me. How many kids we have? 40 little kids. Do you know how many workers we have that say, I'm going to be here every Friday night for whoever's kids come regularly? 2. Anybody see a problem? There's a hole in the wall. The rats are coming. I'm not calling your kids rats. But, you see that. It takes all of us. We got to flip that switch. The church needs you. The world needs you right where you are. Clay Scroggins, who presented this sermon in a different format a year ago, he talked about when he was becoming interested in his church, his brother said this to him. He says, you need to get involved there to the point where when you're not there, someone notices that you're not there. And as churches grow and people say, well, I'm not sure I want to be a part of Acts 2 because it's bigger. I'm not sure if anybody knows if I'm there. Look, friends, if people don't know whether you're here or not, that's a problem. I guarantee you, I know when Carolyn Smith is here or not. She's our lay leader. Carolyn Smith, when we were younger in our church, she sat up the chairs. She handed out the hymnals. She made sure that worship happened. And then as we grew tonight, she's at the front door handing out bulletins. When she's not handing out bulletins, she's greeting people. When she's not greeting, she's helping with something else. I know when Carolyn's here or not because she makes such a difference in my life. Does that make sense? You see, that's how it should be with each and every one of us. That it's not whether, do they notice whether I'm here or not? It should be so evident of the loss that we have when you're not here that people are like, where are they? We've got 40 kids. They're supposed to be helping with the 3-year-olds tonight. Where are they? Help me. Right? I mean, each and every one of us should be so integrated in the life of what God has for us that we are elated and the joy comes. When the kids were about to go to the temple tonight, I saw one of the gentlemen, James Rose of our church, and he walked in, and there were like 5, 6 graders like, James, how you doing? People know when James comes in and out of our church. There's no wondering about whether he's here or not. You see people light up around that. It takes all of us. It needs all of us. You need to get involved there, here, in your church, in any place, to the point that when you're not there, someone notices that you're not there. And we've got a spot for you, friends. We've got a spot for you. So I want to share this meme with you. I found it a couple of weeks ago. I think it's right. We are spiritual contributors, friends, each and every one of us, not spiritual consumers. Spiritual consumerism doesn't work. It's not worth giving my life to. I don't want to be a guy that, A3, you get a prayer. B7, you get some communion. No, there's no power in that, right? We are the family of God. We are the light of the world. The church does not exist for us. We are the church, and we exist for the world, the light of the world, friends. And I know that it's getting harder and harder. I know that. And we have to do church differently, and I know that. And I'm willing to try whatever we need to try to help us get down the road. Because here's the thing. I want to show you this chart, and this is a problem. Because if the church doesn't change to address this, then we're going to have a big problem. In 1950, right, when church was at its heyday, married with the wife home were 68% of the families, right? And so in church in the 1950s, the guy went to work, and more than likely, the wife helped with things at the church. They taught Sunday school. They baked the pie for the funeral dinner, and they did all that. But guess what? That's not the case anymore, right? It's half of that. That's not the case. Single dads, 3% in 1950. Single dad, now, it's doubled. Single moms, doubled. Married wife working, doubled. More than doubled. You see how this works? So I'm not saying, hey, the 3 stay-at-home moms that go to our church, you need to work harder. No, that doesn't work. What I'm saying is every man, woman, and child needs to be helping some other man, woman, and child that's at least 4 years younger than you are. That's what I'm saying. Because by law, that's how we do it. You can't work, within 4 years of your age, particularly if you're a minor, right, for safety reasons. But all of us, it takes all of us. And friends, the church has to get this. We can't just assume that somebody else who used to do it is going to do it. No, it doesn't work at all. So we want you to know that we need you. You're important. You are the light of the world. And we've got a spot for you. We do. We've got relational spots for you where you can lead groups and you can mentor people. We've got technical groups. We need folks for, All the services that we run, audio, video, lighting, child check-in systems, folks to help with parking, folks to help with the building. We don't have any rats in the building that I know of here. I think we're good. Social, being welcoming, greeting, hosting, hospitality, care ministry, visiting people in the hospitals, homebound, nursing homes. All of these things, it takes all of us to do this very well because the church is the hope of the world when it's working right. But it takes all of us. It's not something that just a few of us can do. And as we do this, friends, it makes the rest of your life the best of your life. Wouldn't you like to get to the end of your life and to be able to say, oh yeah, I was a part of that? There are people in this very church that can look back and they say, you know what, in 1999 I helped buy this land. In the 2000s I helped raise a church from 0 to 120 people. In 2005 we helped build that church over there and we filled it up and we doubled in size in a week. And just a few years ago, we built this place. Nothing that any of us could have done by ourselves, we do it together. And if you haven't checked out Bible school lately, oh my goodness, that's a hoot. That is a fun time. Things we do together. So I want to invite you to come along. And if anybody with a gold name tag, if you'll say to them, hey, I'd like to help, we were going to say, yes, please, thank you. Come on. Come help us. Let's change the world together. Amen?